Hello, delegates of the Baltimore-Washington Conference. I'm Reverend Sheridan Allman, and it is my honor to bring to you the report of the Conference Board of Trustees. My report will prepare us to receive this year's local church disaffiliation motion. As part of our preparation, I will remind us about the provisions that are provided in paragraph 2553 of the Book of Discipline. I will then provide a review of the BWC disaffiliation process. After two short updates that cover the BWC disaffiliation lawsuit and the Boy Scouts bankruptcy, I will bring before us the slate of local churches that will constitute our 2023 local church disaffiliation motion. To support this work, you may refer to page 12 of the pre-conference booklet where the slate of disaffiliating churches is found. Our online materials also contain links to the individual church resolutions. Paragraph 2553 is the provision within our Book of Discipline that provides for the disaffiliation of a local church over issues related to human sexuality. Paragraph 2553 was added to the discipline by the 2019 special session of the General Conference. It gives a local church a limited right to disaffiliate from the denomination for reasons of conscience over issues related to human sexuality. The provisions in paragraph 2553 are set to expire on December 31st, 2023. It is under this paragraph that it states that the terms and conditions for a local church disaffiliation shall be established by the Board of Trustees of the annual conference. This work by the Board of Trustees is supported by the advice of the Cabinet, the annual conference treasurer, the annual conference benefits officer, the director of connectional ministries, and the annual conference chancellor. Paragraph 2553 further stipulates that the vote to disaffiliate must be based solely for reasons of conscience regarding a change in the requirements and provisions of the Book of Discipline related to the practice of homosexuality or the ordination or marriage of self-avowed practicing homosexuals as resolved and adopted by the 2019 General Conference, or the actions or inactions of its annual conference related to these issues. The steps in our conference's disaffiliation process were formally introduced at the 2021 annual conference, and two local churches disaffiliated the following year at the 2022 annual conference. Today, I once again put before us the disaffiliation steps that churches in our conference have followed, as we now have a slate of 23 churches who have met the criteria for disaffiliation. Our district superintendents received inquiries from 85 churches between November 2021 and March 2023. These churches received the general terms and conditions specific to their church, including the detailed calculations involved with their disaffiliation payments. The churches also conducted an activity-based discernment process within their congregation. 31 of these churches proceeded to a formal church conference disaffiliation vote, and within that group, there were 23 churches that obtained the required 2/3 majority vote. These churches are now working with the Board of Trustees, our chancellor, and the conference treasurer to assemble the disaffiliation agreements, inventory their assets, and supply the conference archives with copies of their historic documents. Pending the vote of the annual conference, churches have been asked to select one of 3 disaffiliation dates as a process for organizing the exchange of records, documents, and payments. Churches will be organized around the disaffiliation dates of July 31st, September 15th, and October 31st. This schedule will provide us a path that ensures that all the disaffiliations can be completed before the expiration of paragraph 2553 on December 31st, 2023. In this review, I want to remind us of the local church payments that will be made as part of the disaffiliation process. There will be 3 specific local church payments that will be included in every disaffiliation agreement. The first is a payment equal to 50% of the tax-assessed value of the church property. The second is a payment of an additional 12 months of mission shares. And the third is a payment of the church's pro rata share of the unfunded pension obligation. This is known as the withdrawal liability payment. There are also several payments that may apply to a particular local church. These include payment of any unpaid mission shares from the 12 months prior to the disaffiliation date, and payment of all outstanding loans from the conference. The aggregate value of the disaffiliation payments that will be received from the 23 churches is shown on this slide. There will be $10.8 million received as property payments. $984,000 will be received as part of the pension withdrawal payments, and $605,000 will be received based on the additional 12 months of mission shares. The property payments will be invested in the Mid-Atlantic United Methodist Foundation for the future ministries and new faith expressions within the Baltimore-Washington Conference. The pension payments will be invested at Westpath for the long-term benefit and risk mitigation involved with clergy pensions. This is especially important since the disaffiliating churches will not be an available source of additional contributions to the pension plans in the future should the market returns and liability risks require supplemental funding. Lastly, the mission share payments will be placed in the CFA reserved and prioritized for the 2024 budget. Before I close this section, I wanted to display for us once again the information that was shared at the 2022 annual conference regarding our timeline as churches prepared to be part of this year's slate. Churches were guided to contact the district superintendents to initiate the process. Churches were also advised to start the process early enough to complete the local church conference vote by April 30th, 2023. The churches that are on the disaffiliation slate today have met this timeline. At the same time, there are churches that did not meet this timeline who will not be eligible to disaffiliate under paragraph 2553. I now have two quick updates to share with the annual conference before we consider the disaffiliation motion. On March 13, 2023, a complaint was filed by 38 local churches against the Baltimore-Washington Conference, the conference trustees, and Bishop Easterling. The complaint was filed in Anne Arundel County Circuit Court, and it is related to the disaffiliation process within the conference. 2 churches have since then dismissed their claims. We are unable to comment on the specifics of the current litigation, but we can say that it is similar to litigation that has been brought against other conferences by the National Center for Life and Liberty. Of the churches represented in the complaint, we can also state that 30 of the churches in the lawsuit were formally involved with the BWC disaffiliation process prior to the lawsuit being filed. These churches were notified of their removal from the disaffiliation process under paragraph 2553 unless they withdrew from the lawsuit. Regarding the Boy Scouts bankruptcy, the latest update was received on March 28th of this year when the U.S. District Court affirmed the approval of the BSA reorganization plan. This is allowing steps to be taken to establish the settlement trust that will guide the collection of settlement funds and organize the distribution of benefits to the survivors of abuse. It is important to realize that it is also a time for potential appeals to be heard at the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Third Circuit. It is unknown at this time whether the potential appeals will have any impact on the push to establish the settlement trust. Beyond this most current update, this slide also reminds us that in January 2022, the conference trustees and the CFA committed to support a payment of $1.38 million towards the UMC total commitment of $30 million to the settlement trust. The CFA has designated these funds in the CFA reserves for payment once we are guided to do so by the General Counsel on Finance and Administration. As we acknowledge the challenges that local churches have navigated to keep their local troops intact since the original filing of the BSA bankruptcy in February 2020, it is becoming apparent that survivors of abuse are now on a path to receive the assistance that they deserve, and our troops are positioned to continue their ministries for many years to come. We are thankful for all the local churches and leaders and clergy who have walked this path with the conference trustees and our chancellor for over the past 4 years. I will now complete my report with the reading of our motion. Based on the work of the local church leaders with their district superintendents, I move forward the slate of the 2023 Baltimore-Washington Conference disaffiliations under paragraph 2553 for consideration by the annual conference. In making this motion, the conference board of trustees submit that each local church on the slate meets the following standards as established in the disaffiliation process for the Baltimore-Washington Conference. They meet the requirements to disaffiliation under paragraph 2553. They have completed an activity-based discernment, and they have each achieved a 2/3 majority church conference vote to disaffiliate. We also acknowledge that acceptance of this motion requires a simple majority vote of the annual conference. On behalf of the Conference Board of Trustees, I thank the Bishop and the annual conference delegates for allowing me to address you today as we bring forth this disaffiliation motion for your consideration. Thank you.